Let me ask you something. When was the last time you and your partner had a conversation that didn't somehow turn into an argument? Like you could be talking about what to have for dinner, and by the end of it, someone's bringing up something that happened 3 years ago. If that sounds familiar, I want you to stick with me because what I'm about to share might be one of the most important things you hear about your relationship this year. There's a phase that couples fall into, and most of them don't even realize it's happening until they're already deep inside it. Therapists sometimes call it the conflict escalation cycle, but I want to call it what it actually feels like from the inside, the war phase. And no, I'm not being dramatic. I mean a state where the two of you have stopped being partners and started being opponents, where every interaction carries this underlying tension, like you're both waiting for the other person to say the wrong thing. Where it genuinely feels like you're living with someone who is against you rather than someone who is for you. The scary part is that most couples don't walk into this. They slide into it, slowly over months, sometimes over years. And by the time they notice something is seriously wrong, the habits and patterns are already so deeply baked in that it feels almost impossible to reverse. Almost. Not impossible. But we'll get to that. Right now, I want to walk you through the 3 signs that your relationship has entered or is entering this war phase, because awareness is literally the first step to changing anything. So, let's get into it. The first sign is that winning matters more than understanding. And this one is sneaky because on the surface, it just looks like two people who disagree a lot. But there's something more specific going on here. When a relationship enters the war phase, arguments stop being about solving a problem and start being about proving a point. You're not trying to figure things out together anymore. You're trying to be right, and your partner is doing the exact same thing on their side. Think about your last big argument. What were you actually focused on during it? Were you listening to what they were saying, genuinely trying to understand where they were coming from? Or were you in your head preparing your next response, collecting evidence, building your case? Most of us, if we're honest, are doing the second thing. We're not listening to understand. Or worse, we've already stopped listening altogether because we assume we already know what they're going to say. This is one of the patterns that Dr. John Gottman, one of the most well-known relationship researchers in the world, identified as deeply corrosive to long-term relationships. When contempt and defensiveness take over, you've essentially stopped seeing your partner as someone to collaborate with and started seeing them as a problem to defeat. And every conversation, even the casual ones, gets filtered through that lens. You start keeping score. You start remembering every time you were wrong about something so you can bring it up later as ammunition. You stop being generous in how you interpret what they say. If they say something that could mean 2 things, you always assume the more negative meaning. That's not just conflict anymore. That's war. The second sign is physical and emotional withdrawal. Now this one often gets confused with needing space, which is normal and healthy. But there's a very real difference between I need some time to decompress and a slow, quiet retreat from the relationship entirely. When couples enter the war phase, one or both partners start pulling back in ways that are hard to put into words but very easy to feel. You stop sharing the small things. You used to come home and just tell them about a weird interaction you had at work or something funny you saw on your lunch break. And now you don't. Not because nothing happened, but because you don't feel safe sharing anymore. You don't know how it'll land. You don't want to open a door that might lead to a whole thing, so you keep it to yourself. And they keep their things to themselves. And slowly you're living parallel lives under the same roof. The physical withdrawal is real too. And I'm not just talking about intimacy, although that absolutely suffers. I mean the little things. You used to touch each other in passing. A hand on the shoulder, sitting close on the couch, a quick kiss for no reason. Those gestures start disappearing. Not all at once. Gradually. And one day you realize you can't remember the last time your partner reached for your hand. And you can't remember the last time you reached for theirs. What's happening here psychologically is that your nervous system has started categorizing your partner as a source of stress, rather than a source of comfort. Think about that for a second. The person who was supposed to be your safe place now triggers your fight or flight response. So your body does what it's designed to do. It protects you by pulling away, by shutting down. Researchers actually have a word for this: stonewalling. And it's not always intentional. Sometimes people stonewall because they're so emotionally flooded they genuinely don't have the capacity to engage. But over time it becomes a pattern, and that pattern tells your partner that they don't matter, that you're checked out. And that makes them either withdraw further or come at you harder. Neither option is good. The third sign, and this one might be the most painful to sit with, is that you've started building a case against your partner in your own mind. What I mean by that is this. You've started collecting evidence. Not consciously, not with a spreadsheet, but in the back of your mind you're building a narrative. A story about who your partner really is. And it's not a flattering one. Every time they do something that annoys you or hurts you, it goes into this mental file. And that file is labeled something like proof that they don't care, or proof that they'll never change, or proof that I deserve better. And here's the really insidious part. Once that narrative is in place, your brain starts filtering everything your partner does through it. They do something nice, you find a reason to dismiss it. They're only being sweet because they want something. They apologize, they always apologize and then do the same thing again. They try to connect with you, too little, too late. The narrative becomes self-reinforcing. Every piece of evidence that contradicts it gets minimized, and every piece that confirms it gets amplified. This is called a negative sentiment override, and it's one of the biggest predictors of relationship breakdown that therapists and researchers have identified. What makes this so hard is that it doesn't feel like a distortion. It feels like clarity. It feels like you've finally seen your partner for who they really are. Like the rose-colored glasses are off, and now you're just being realistic. But what's actually happened is that you've lost access to the full picture. You can only see the bad, and when you can only see the bad in someone, it becomes very difficult to fight for them or the relationship. Now here's what I want you to take away from all of this, because I don't want to leave you with just a list of warning signs and no direction. If you recognize yourself or your relationship in any of these three signs, please don't panic, and please don't take it as confirmation of whatever narrative your brain has been building. The fact that you're watching something like this, that you're willing to look at your relationship, honestly, that says something important about you. Most people in a war phase are so deep in survival mode that reflection feels impossible. You're doing the reflection. That matters. The war phase is not a death sentence for a relationship. It's a warning. It's your relationship telling you that the current patterns are not sustainable and something needs to change. And change is possible. Couples come back from this all the time, but it requires both people to decide that they'd rather be connected than right, that they'd rather understand than win, that the person across from them is not the enemy. That shift doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with exactly what you're doing right now, paying attention. If this video resonated with you, drop a comment below. Tell me which of these three signs hit closest to home, because I read every single comment and I want to know what you're dealing with. And if you want to go deeper into how to actually start reversing these patterns, make sure you're subscribed, because that's exactly what I'll be getting into next. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.